Hey everybody, we're going to look at some early American documents, including the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, but in between the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, we're going to look at something called the Articles of Confederation. Getting started, the Declaration of Independence is a two-part document, but understand it is not a governing document. It doesn't lay the ground or foundation for how this country is going to govern itself if and when the colonists were going to defeat the monarchy. The two-part document guarantees, or should say promotes, natural rights and equality of all men, basically property holders at the time who are white males. But then also it's a declaration of war, spelling out the reasons why this group of colonists or colonies should break from the monarchy. Our first governing document is the Articles of Confederation, which recognizes all states as sovereign, but by doing so, it said that all states can essentially do whatever they wanted to do. There was no fortified, centralized government like we have today. This is what we would call a confederation of states. When we realized that the Articles of Confederation couldn't work, we had to go to another attempt at forming a document for this country. The Constitution was created. We are going to have our differences between warring sides. I guess you could put the word warring in quotes. Those from big states, sort of like those from Virginia versus those from New Jersey or small states, and the type of government that they wanted. We have what we call the Great Compromise, or what we also called the Connecticut Compromise, which explained how our Senate and our House of Representatives would be drawn up. Can't forget that we also had something called the 3/5 Compromise, where slaves were counted as 3/5 of a person for census purposes. The southern states wanted slaves counted as a full person. By doing so, they would have more representation in the House of Representatives. Northern states were against that, but in order to get states on board with this Constitution, we had to make sure that a compromise was drawn up. We believe in a liberal democratic government. We also believe in separation of powers and checks and balances, meaning that no one branch of government is going to be more dominant than another. And what we have from this Constitution is something that we call federalism, which there is a power sharing or a distribution of power and resources between the federal government and the states. When you read through the Constitution, you'll notice that Article 1 deals with the legislative branch, which also includes something called the Necessary and Proper Clause, or the Elastic Clause, where we expand the powers of Congress regardless of actually what is written in the Constitution itself. Article 2 deals with the executive branch. Article 3 deals with the judicial system. And most importantly, at the bottom, Article 6 talks about the Supremacy Clause, which says that federal law has precedence over state law, which means no state law can override federal law. And there are the 7 articles in our Constitution. You had 2 groups of people at this time fighting for ratification. You had the Federalists who believed in the Constitution but did not believe in a Bill of Rights. You had the Anti-Federalists who essentially did not like the way, big government would work. So they were fearful of having a Constitution that gave too much power to the government. So they were in favor of a Bill of Rights. In order to get both sides together, people like James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay got together, put something called the Federalist together, or sometimes it's known as the Federalist Papers. And it was a form of propaganda to get the Federalists and Anti-Federalists together, to get them to understand that, yes, there might be some problems with the Constitution, but it's the best thing going outside of having an Articles of Confederation or having downright anarchy at that time. So they wanted to get everybody on board, understanding that there will be problems. And I think the most important part in that document is Federalist Paper number 10, where Madison talks about these factions, that yes, you are going to have two sides against each other when it comes to certain issues, and they're going to have their own selfish interests. So understand that this might be a government run by selfish people. We also have methods of how we are going to ratify the Constitution. The most common form that we see is that we have the Congress vote in favor of ratification, or amending the Constitution, I should say. You needed 2/3 of both houses of Congress and 3/4 of the states to do so. We also are going to see later on down the line of the power of the Supreme Court, or the federal judiciary, and how it's grown. It comes from something in 1803, not in the Constitution, but a Supreme Court case involving Marbury versus Madison, and establishing something called judicial review. That expanded the powers of the judicial branch at that time.